You ever hear voices in silence? Not the crazy kind, well, maybe a little, but the kind that creeps in when the world shuts up for a second and you're left alone with yourself. That still moment where something brushes against your chest, not with hands, but with a weight you can't explain. See, people laugh at that. They call it imagination, grief, maybe even madness, but not you. No, you feel it. You've always felt it. Like someone's been watching you, not to punish you, not to scare you, but to remind you you're not forgotten. Isn't that the funny thing? We all secretly hope, even the ones who swear they don't care, that maybe, just maybe, someone out there still remembers we exist. Because when the doors shut and the lights go dim and everyone else moves on with their lives, you're left sitting in that lovely little echo chamber called your mind, wondering if all this bleeding, all this breaking, was ever seen in the first place. Oh, they said he was watching, right? That some guy upstairs with a beard and a throne is keeping tabs. But it never feels that way when you're crying into your hands, trying to stop shaking, hoping this isn't the night you finally lose it. But here's what I don't tell you. It's not about being seen when everything's shiny. It's about being seen when you're crawling, when you're limping through your own mess and still getting back up. That's when the spotlight hits you. That's when the real watchers lean in. You've been mistaken, thinking that silence meant absence, thinking the delays meant denial, but oh no, that's just how they test the ones who've been chosen without their consent. Yeah, that's the real joke, being picked for a stage you never auditioned for. You've been through some things, haven't you? Things that don't quite show on the surface. You dress up. Nice. You smile. You answer, "I'm fine," like a pro. But underneath there's a graveyard of battles no one claps for. You've carried grief like it was part of your anatomy. You've watched people walk away and call it timing. And you stood in the middle of storms that no one warned you about. No umbrella, no map, no. And still you kept walking. You didn't quit. And for that alone, you were never forgotten. No, you were being documented, watched, followed. See, there's a difference between forgotten and hidden. You were hidden. On purpose, pulled back while the pieces aligned in shadows. That's why things felt like they were moving for everyone else except you. That's why prayers turned into sighs. You weren't being ignored. You were being preserved. You were the prototype that couldn't be rushed. The experiment that needed just the right amount of pressure before the breakthrough. Because if they moved too soon, you would have cracked. If they spoke too early, you wouldn't have heard. So they waited. And you mistook the waiting as abandonment, but it wasn't. It was choreography. The kind that looks like chaos until you step back and see the rhythm. Every closed door wasn't punishment, it was redirection. Every no wasn't a rejection, it was a reframe. They were crafting something in you that couldn't be rushed, cracked, couldn't be skipped. Because when you're marked for something bigger, the process is cruel before it's kind. But just because you didn't get a message in the sky doesn't mean they weren't speaking. You just had to become someone who could understand the language in the ones in heaven. They don't speak like we do. They don't send texts or tweets or trending reels. They whisper through restlessness. They show up in dreams that jolt you awake at 3 a.m. They repeat faces, names, signs over and over until you either pay attention or lose your mind. They're relentless like that. And for you, oh, they've been circling your name like vultures of purpose, waiting for you to crack the code, to stop begging and start becoming. Because that's how chosen ones awaken. Not with applause, but with ache. You weren't left behind. You were left alone for a reason. Because noise distracts, comfort settings, but silence births transformation. And in that isolation, you weren't abandoned, you were activated, trained without realizing. Every betrayal, a sharpening. Every heartbreak, a lesson in disguise. Every failure, a setup wrapped in a warning. They saw it all, and they let it happen, not because they hated you, but because they trusted what would come out of the wreckage. So don't play small now. Don't shrink and pretend like you're average. You're not. You never were. That's why life hit different for you. That's why peace felt temporary and chaos felt familiar. You weren't built for the easy route. You were built for revelation, for disruption, for a message that needed scars to deliver it properly. And someone up there? They've been waiting for you to realize it. Waiting for you to stop looking for proof in the external and start recognizing the survival as the sign. Because the fact that you're still standing after everything means you were never, ever forgotten. The silence you felt was never absence. It was preparation. You thought the quiet was a punishment, didn't you? Thought the stillness meant you were being overlooked, discarded, left to rot in your own confusion. But that's not how it works, not for people like you. See, the ones with noise in their veins, the ones who walk around with lightning trapped under their skin. They don't get the luxury of peace until the fire's ready. And that silence you hate so much, that was the cocoon. The ugly, suffocating, God-forsaken cocoon where all your screaming turned inward and all your plans turned to dust. But it was never a void, it was a forge. You kept asking where everyone went, where the help was, where the signs were. You asked and asked until your voice cracked. And when no answer came, you assumed the worst. That no one was listening. That you were screaming into an empty sky. That maybe, just maybe, you weren't worth the reply. But let me tell you something real funny. Silence is the language of transformation. You don't bake a cake by screaming at it. You don't grow muscle by whispering to your bones. And you don't turn into something dangerous by being constantly comforted. No, you're sharpened by solitude, by discomfort, by that eerie, skin-crawling quiet that makes you face every little part of yourself without a single distraction. They were preparing you. Oh yes. Pulling back the noise so you could hear the one voice that mattered. Yours. Not the watered-down version. Not the people-pleasing echo. The raw one. The one buried under guilt and rules and expectations and fear. The one that only comes out when everything else shuts up. That's the voice they were after. That's the one they wanted you to hear. But you can't hear it in applause. You hear it when the crowd leaves and the lights go out. You hear it when you've got nothing but your own heartbeat and a room that won't answer back, and you hated it, didn't you? Hated how still everything became. How people stopped calling. How doors stopped opening. How it felt like you were stuck in some spiritual waiting room with no clock, no exit, no explanation. But what if that room wasn't a punishment? What if it was a dressing room, a war room? A place where they stripped you down just to rebuild you without the lies? Because let's be honest, you weren't ready before. You wanted the spotlight with shaky knees. You wanted the crown without the scars, and they knew it. So they shut the world out and turned the volume down until all that was left was the real you. Screaming to be born, they let you sit in the silence so long you started questioning it. Started wondering if you'd imagined the calling, the dream, the purpose. That's how they do it, you know. Strip away all the fluff until you're left staring at your own reflection. No filters, no edits, just raw reality. And in that place, that's where you found the truth. That's where the real training began. Because nothing trains a soul like silence. Nothing sharpens discernment like disappointment. And nothing builds resilience like being left with no one but yourself, and a whisper from the void. Preparation never feels like progress. That's the trick. It feels like dying. It feels like drowning in still water. But that's because the work was internal. They weren't fixing your environment, they were fortifying your foundation. They were rewiring the way you see, the way you think, the way you choose. Every delay was a detox. Every unanswered prayer was a redirection. Every closed door was insulation, not rejection. Because you weren't just being saved, you were being sculpted. And you don't sculpt with kisses. You sculpt with pressure, with silence. With heat. You were always going to be more than they thought, more than you thought. But they had to quiet the world so you could hear the strategy, the battle plan. The instructions that don't come through megaphones, they come through whispers, through gut feelings, through the kind of dreams that leave you breathless. But you can't get those messages when you're distracted by the noise of approval and attention. That's why they took it all away, not because you failed, but because you were being called into something that demanded silence before the sound. So while you were busy resenting the stillness, they were setting the stage. While you were begging for the noise to return, they were preparing the moment it would. But this time when it does, you won't just hear it differently. You'll be different, and that changes everything. Your survival wasn't luck, it was protection. You think you just happened to make it out of that? That after all the chaos, all the knives in your back and the bombs under your bed, you just tripped and stumbled into survival like a drunk man falling into a safe house? That's cute. Really, you think the odds were in your favor? No, the odds were salivating at your destruction. They were betting against you, laughing, toasting their glasses while you cried on the floor. But something, somewhere, someone didn't let them cash in on that bet. You were shielded. Not spared, shielded. There's a difference, see, when luck walks in. It usually leaves just as quick. It's sloppy, it's random. It doesn't care about the story, but protection. That's personal. That's intentional. That's someone putting their hand over your life and saying, not yet, not like this. You were supposed to break, you were supposed to lose your mind. You were supposed to end it on one of those nights when it got too loud in your skull and too quiet in your phone. And yet, here you are, not unscarred, no, not untouched. But undeniably here, that should bother you. Not in the sad way, in the curious way. Because think how many people were stronger than you and still folded. How many had more support, more smiles, more money, and they still couldn't crawl out of their pit. And you, with your shattered self-worth and duct-tape dreams, still breathing, still functioning, still pretending you've got it together when we both know you're one wrong word away from unraveling again. That's not luck. That's evidence. Of what? Of interference, divine, calculated surgical interference. You ever notice how the worst didn't fully hit? Like it came close, right to the edge, like death and despair were circling but never really sunk their teeth all the way in. That wasn't coincidence. That was calibration. You were allowed to feel it, to taste it, so you'd know what it means to walk through fire. But you weren't allowed to die in it. Because your story wasn't written for tragedy. It just had to start there. Why? Because pretty stories don't shake people. And you were meant to shake people. So your survival had to be ugly enough to prove something. Raw enough to make liars sweat. Real enough to make others believe it's possible for them. 2, you think the attacks on your life were random. That every betrayal, every heartbreak, every night you thought you'd never get through was just a series of unfortunate events. Try this on. What if those attacks were strategic because what's inside you is dangerous to darkness? What if they knew something about you before you knew it yourself? What if the reason you were targeted so young, so often, so viciously was because you were built to disrupt things and they couldn't risk you finding that out too soon? So they tried to kill you with guilt, with shame, with fear wrapped in friendly faces, but they failed. Not because you were lucky, but because something stood between you and the finish line you thought was death. Something said they can fall, but not that far. They can cry, but not collapse. They can wander, but don't let them disappear. And so here you are with breath in your lungs and weight on your name. That's not small. That's not an accident. That's proof you were preserved. You didn't survive because you're smart, or strong, or stubborn. Though maybe you are all those things, but you survived because you were meant to. Because your survival carries data. It carries evidence. It carries weight. There are people attached to your life that you haven't met yet. People whose freedom is connected to your scars. That's why you couldn't quit. That's why they blocked the bullet, delayed the collapse, held back the full force of the breakdown. You're not just a survivor, you're a carrier of something dangerous, of something disruptive. And protection is always loudest when the battle is silent, so next time you feel like you made it out by chance, remember chance dragged you. It doesn't whisper your name while you sleep. And it doesn't make sure the knife missed your heart by an inch just so you'd wake up one more day and wonder why. No, that wasn't luck. That was a warning shot to the darkness. A reminder that you don't belong to the pit. That no matter how close it got, you weren't theirs to claim. Of course you felt unqualified. Of course you looked in the mirror and laughed at the idea of being chosen. You, the one with the mess for a past and a graveyard full of mistakes. You, the one who can't even pray without second guessing if anyone's listening. The one who still flinches when certain names pop up on the phone. Who still has nightmares in broad daylight and trust issues layered so deep even love can't reach without a map. Yeah, you were always the pick. That's the punchline they don't tell you. See, the ones who think they're qualified usually aren't. Too clean, too calculated, too careful. But the ones who know what it's like to bleed, to lose, to beg for mercy in the dark with cracked voices and trembling hands, those are the dangerous ones. Because they don't just talk, they testify. They don't just lead, they bleed when they speak. They don't need to convince anybody they're holy because they've already seen hell. And when you've seen hell, you stop trying to be impressive and start becoming effective. You know why you feel like a fraud sometimes? Because the version of you that got called isn't the version you're used to performing. They didn't choose your mask, they chose your wound. That wound you keep covering with jokes and silence and avoidance. That's where the power is, that's the access point. That's what heaven saw when you were trying to be pretty for the cameras and polite for the cameras, and they looked past all of that and said, there, that pain, that's where we'll start. And it scared you, because you thought you had to be whole to be worthy. But the truth is, the cracks are what prove you can carry something. You think you're late, think you missed it. But they waited for you, delayed certain moments, canceled certain connections, blocked certain platforms. Not because you weren't enough, but because you weren't ready to believe you were. They could have launched you when you begged for it, when you were convinced success was your savior. But they didn't want you to be famous with a fake foundation. They wanted you to be free, because freedom outlives fame. And you can't free others if you're still a prisoner to your own reflection. So here's the joke, the irony, the twist in the story. The thing you've been running from, that unhealed version of you, that's the exact one they're using. Not the one you dress up for social media. Not the version that smiles through teeth clenched in anxiety. The broken one. The bitter one. The one that doesn't. Pray right, talk right, feel right. That's the one that got the assignment. Because that one's honest. That one doesn't have time to pretend. That one doesn't perform. That one's dangerous to systems built on appearance and applause, and a world's not ready for that version of you, are they? The raw one. The one that's too loud, too honest, too weird, too real. But you're not here to make them comfortable. You're here to disrupt, to interrupt cycles, to walk into rooms and shift the atmosphere just by surviving. Just by standing up and not shrinking. Just by refusing to apologize for still being here after everything they threw at you. You're not too broken. You're battle-tested. You're not too messy, you're marked. And that feeling you get, that trembling, that tightness in your chest when you think about stepping forward, that's not fear. That's recognition. Your soul waking up to the sound of purpose, calling your name with a grin. And oh, they're nervous. The systems, the patterns, the familiar dysfunctions. They're all shaking because you're not playing your part anymore. You're rewriting the script. You're flipping the board. And they don't know what to do with someone who knows their worth and still walks in limping. That limp, that's proof of the fight. That's your credential. That's your key. You were never disqualified. You were being prepared. And every no, every delay, every closed door wasn't rejection, it was insulation. It was heaven keeping you from performing for a crowd you were never meant to entertain. Because when you finally walk into the room you're meant for, you won't need applause. You won't need validation. You'll carry the kind of presence that speaks without a mic, that commands attention, without screaming, that turns heads because it comes with scars that tell a story only survivors understand. So yeah, you're unqualified by their standards. Beautiful. That's exactly what makes you chosen. You ever notice how quiet it gets right before something big happens? Not peaceful quiet, no, that's too gentle. I mean that eerie, suffocating kind of silence. The kind that crawls under your skin and makes you wonder if you're losing it. The kind where every clock tick sounds like a scream and even your thoughts start pacing like inmates in a prison cell. Yeah, that silence. That's not nothing. That's the sound of war in the spirit. The sound of something massive trying to break through while everything familiar tries to hold it back. You feel stuck. Good. That's where pressure builds before something snaps. You're not being ignored. You're being observed, studied, watched, and not by people. Oh no, they don't even know half of what's coming. They think you're just quiet now because you've run out of things to say. They think you've calmed down, that you've settled. They don't see what's happening in the room with you, around you, in the shadows, the shifting. The unseen hands that are either protecting or preparing, sometimes both at once. You think those dreams are just dreams. That tug in your chest, that nausea when you walk into certain places, that sudden flood of tears out of nowhere, that's not drama. That's your soul reacting to a message your brain can't translate. Something's coming, and it's not small. That's why the pressure's high. That's why you've been under attack from angles that don't even make sense. You're not cursed. You're a threat. But threats get tested. You've been in a pressure cooker disguised as a season, and it's been turning up slowly. First the people left, then the peace, then the sense of time, then the motivation, until all that was left was you, raw, unfiltered, exhausted you. That version of you that doesn't sugarcoat anymore, that doesn't beg to be seen. That doesn't even explain their absence, just vanishes and reappears stronger. It had to happen like that. Because if it were comfortable, you'd still be cuddled up with your old patterns. But this time, the discomfort came with a purpose. This wasn't punishment, it was pruning. It was stripping away every illusion you built around survival. Because you don't need those illusions where you're going. You're not being elevated into a higher life just to pretend again. This next chapter doesn't have space for. You ever notice how quiet it gets right before something explodes? Not the bang, not the flash, before. That eerie silence, that strange little moment where the world holds its breath like it knows something's about to shatter. That's the kind of silence we're living in right now. Everyone's talking, screaming, posting, scrolling, so much noise you'd think they were trying to drown something out. But deep under all that chaos, there's a whisper, a small one, real soft, not flashy, not loud, just there. And nobody's listening. Not really. Because when something's quiet, people assume it's not important. They mistake volume for value. Funny. You ever hear that sound? Not a bang, not a scream, not even a whisper. Just quiet, but it crawls under your skin like it knows something, like it's been trying to tell you something all along. That little voice. Oh, it's not dramatic, doesn't slap you in the face, no, it just nags. A tickle in your brain, a shadow on a bright day, and we're professionals at tuning it out. Experts, really. So good at ignoring it that we forget it was ever there. But it's still there, isn't it? Hiding beneath the noise, the buzz of screens, the lies we tell ourselves in mirrors we don't even bother to clean anymore. You hear it when you're alone. When the world finally shuts up for 5 seconds and you're left with your own heartbeat, your own thoughts, your own regrets simmering in a soup of maybe I should haves. That voice doesn't scream because it doesn't have to. It already knows everything. It's the part of you that doesn't lie, doesn't care about your excuses, doesn't care about your little drama or your broken timeline. It just waits, watches, waiting for the moment you break enough to finally stop pretending you're okay. It speaks when you're most fragile, when the room's too quiet and you can hear the weight of every wrong step echoing like broken glass under bare feet. It's the voice that says, turn around, or not this one, or it's time, and we call it what? Instinct? Intuition? Conscience? Funny how we keep trying to rename what we don't want to face. Because if we listen, really listen, then we're responsible, aren't we? Responsible for change, for stepping into something uncomfortable, unpredictable, raw. And oh, we hate raw. We want life sterilized, bubble wrapped in affirmations and safe quotes and dopamine scrolls. But life's a back alley deal gone wrong. And truth doesn't knock politely, it claws. And when it gets tired of being ignored, it burns. You ever wonder how many chances you missed because you were too busy pretending you couldn't hear? How many people slipped through your fingers because you convinced yourself it wasn't the right time, or you weren't good enough, or maybe next year, when things are better? That voice was there then too, it was always there. It's the oldest part of you. The part they tried to medicate, to rationalize, to drown in to-do lists and trauma bond. But you can't kill something that was never born. That voice, it's ancient, and it speaks in signs, not sentences, in shivers, not speeches. You think miracles come with fireworks and clarity? Nah, they come as gut feelings you ignore, as doors you walk past, as people you ghost because they made you feel too much. They come as uncomfortable truths told in the mirror when your mascara's running and your soul's tired of pretending. The real messages, the ones that actually matter, they don't fit on motivational posters or in 60-second reels with royalty piano music. They're messy, inconvenient, scary, but true. And deep down, you know, that one thing you've been avoiding, that decision you've been delaying, that change you keep rehearsing in your head but never commit to. The voice is still there. It's always been there. It doesn't care about your timeline. It only cares that you hear it. Not just hear it, really listen. You know what I mean. Listening with the spine, not just the ears. Listening like everything depends on it, 'cause it just might. See, the lie is that it's too late, that you missed it, that your best chances are buried behind bad decisions. But what if, and I'm just playing here, what if the voice is still speaking because the story isn't over? What if this is the moment, the one you'll look back on in 10 years and say, that was it? That was when everything shifted. Not because something exploded outside, but because something cracked open inside. Just a little, just enough for the voice to slip through. The one that's been waiting for you to finally shut up long enough to notice that you're not broken, you're just buried. And the voice, oh, it's been digging, whisper by whisper, shovel by shovel, waiting for the day you stop looking for signs in the sky and start listening to the thunder in your chest. They always think silence means peace, don't they? Sweet, serene peace. But silence is just the absence of distraction. And when all the noise stops, the phones, the fake laughter, the traffic, the hum of other people pretending to matter, what do you hear? Exactly, you hear you. That ticking clock behind your eyes, the one that doesn't tell time, no, it tells truth. Ugly, squirming, inconvenient truth. And most people can't stand it. They run from it like it's a stray dog with rabies. They fill their heads with noise, buy things they can't afford, fall into people who only want their highlight reel, all because they're terrified of what they'll hear when the world finally goes mute. Because in the silence you realize something terrifying. You realize that all the masks you've worn have started to fit too well, that you've played so many roles you forgot your original face. That all the dreams you whispered into your pillow as a kid have been replaced by checklists, deadlines, and apologies you never meant. The silence doesn't ask for your resume. It doesn't care who you pretend to be. It only wants one thing: honesty. Not the kind you share on social media. The kind that leaks out when you're staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. Heart racing for no reason. Tears drying before they even make it to your chin. And that's when it hits. The memories. The ones you locked away in dusty corners. The promises you made to yourself when the pain was still fresh. When the wounds still burned. When you swore you'd never let that happen again. But here you are, letting it happen. Over and over. Why? Because you forgot, or worse, you remembered and chose comfort over confrontation. You chose soft lies over sharp truth. You chose company over solitude, even if the company drained you like a leech in a bathtub of blood. But here's the real kicker. The silence, it's not your enemy. It's your mirror. And not the kind with lighting filters or flattering angles, no. This mirror shows you everything. The cracks, the stains, the things you pretend don't hurt anymore. It shows you your reflection in its rawest form. A scared little creature who just wants to be seen, understood, maybe even loved, but is too proud to admit it. So what do? We laugh at the silence, mock it, call it boring, but it knows. It always knows, because silence is where the real you lives, the unedited version, the one that remembers every betrayal, every moment of joy so sharp it hurt, every time you screamed into a pillow because it was the only thing that wouldn't judge you. In silence, there's no applause, no validation, no audience to perform for, just you. And maybe that's the scariest part. That without the chaos, you're left with the question you've avoided your entire life. Who are you when nobody's watching? You start hearing the echoes of choices made in desperation, of words you wish you could swallow, of people you pushed away because they got too close to the truth. You start realizing that maybe, just maybe, the silence isn't empty at all. Maybe it's full of ghosts, of second chances, of the version of you that never got a chance, a courtroom with no judge, just you and the evidence of who you've been, laid out like a crime scene. And what a scene it is, messy, chaotic, real. No filters, no edits, just the raw footage of a life lived too fast, too fake, too far from the voice that used to guide you, the one you buried beneath expectations and heartbreak and the kind of exhaustion that doesn't go away with sleep. In the silence, you remember what it felt like to want something real, to crave a purpose bigger than survival, to love without strategy, to dream without doubt. That silence doesn't lie, it whispers in your own voice, the one you've forgotten, the one that doesn't beg to be heard. It dares you to listen. And once you start listening, really listening, you can't unhear it. The world may go back to screaming, the noise may return like a tidal wave of static and nonsense, but something inside you has shifted. The silence planted a seed, one that won't stop growing even if you pretend it's not there. Even if you bury it under new distractions, it grows in the dark, it thrives in the quiet, and one day it breaks through. A crack in the armor, a voice in the void, a reminder that you were never lost, just buried under too much noise, too many masks, too many lies. The silence knew, it always did, and it waited for you to be still enough to hear it scream. Everyone wants to be seen, but no one wants to be exposed. That's the game, isn't it? We scream for attention, beg for recognition, but the second someone sees past the curtain into the mess, the madness, the truth, we flinch, we hide. Because being seen for who you really are is terrifying. It's not applause you're afraid of, it's the silence that comes after. The moment they realize you're not who they thought. You're not the polished version, the well-lit highlight reel. You're cracked porcelain, barely holding yourself together with spit tape and the last flicker of hope you pretend not to need. You're not broken, no, you're shattered in the most beautiful, deliberate way. And you walk around hoping no one notices the way you rattle when you move. But let me tell you a little secret. Those who've suffered too much, they can't hide, not really. They don't walk, they drift, not like ghosts, no. More like shadows, present but not, smiling but not, laughing but not. Because the laugh is just camouflage, isn't it? A weapon, a shield, a distraction. You've suffered too much when your jokes start to sound like pleas. When your eyes sparkle with secrets, when you flinch at kindness because it feels foreign, like a punch in slow motion. You've suffered too much when peace feels suspicious and chaos feels like home. And oh, how well you adapt. It's almost admirable. You can sit in a room full of noise and still feel like you're underwater. You can look someone in the eye and lie so well, even your reflection starts to believe you. But deep down, there's a scream that never stops, a pressure behind the ribs, under the skin, whispering that something isn't right. You've mastered the art of pretending to function. A masterclass in smiling through soul-deep exhaustion, but no one notices, do they? Because you've become an expert at giving just enough energy to pass, just enough truth to be trusted, just enough life to look alive. There are signs, though. Little cracks in the mask. You over-apologize even when it's not your fault. You plan exits in rooms you just entered. You think love is earned through pain and silence is safer than vulnerability. You replay conversations in your head like broken records, wondering what you should have said differently. You overthink compliments and underplay achievement. You sabotage good things before they get too close, because you'd rather destroy it yourself than watch someone else walk away with the match in hand. People think suffering leaves scars, but no, it leaves patterns, habits, reactions. A blueprint of defense mechanisms so intricate, even you forget which ones were built out of necessity and which were built out of fear. You don't flinch because you're fragile. You flinch because you're trained your body to expect impact. You don't pull away from love because you're cold. You pull away because love, real love, feels like standing in front of a loaded gun with no promise it won't go off. You've learned to keep people close enough to feel them, but far enough not to depend on them. Because the last time you depended on someone, you bled for it. But here's the cruel twist. You start to wear your suffering like a badge. Not because you want pity. No, pity's poison. You wear it because it reminds you that you survived. You didn't crumble. You cracked, sure, but the light still gets through, doesn't it? You walk like a monument to the things that tried to kill you but failed. And people see the fire in your eyes and mistake it for strength. But that fire, that's not strength. That's rage. That's grief. That's 1,000 uncried tears burning behind a smirk that says, "I'm fine." You're not fine. You're functioning. There's a difference. You've suffered too much when silence becomes your sanctuary. Not peace, not joy, just the absence of more. You avoid people not because you're antisocial, but because small talk feels like nails on a chalkboard when your insides are screaming for realness. You find beauty in broken things. You relate more to villains than heroes. And when people say you're so strong, you want to laugh in their face because strength wasn't a choice. It was survival. You learned to swim by almost drowning. You learned to breathe through panic. You learned to carry your wounds like armor and dare anyone to try and cut deeper. They don't see it. The way your hands shake when you're alone. The way you rehearse goodbyes before people even say hello. The way hope feels like a dangerous drug, and healing feels like betrayal to the version of you that never got the chance. You've suffered too much when numbness feels safer than joy, when rest feels like weakness, when you're more afraid of being loved than being hated. You've suffered too much when you've made a home out of your pain, decorated it with jokes and distractions, and called it normal just so no one tries to clean it up. They say time heals. That's the kind of thing people tell you when they don't know what else to say, when they don't want to sit in the mess with you, when they can't handle the silence that screams louder than any sob. Time doesn't heal. Time hides. It buries things. Deep under layers of noise, schedules, fake smiles, and polite small talk. But if you sit still long enough, if you stop pretending long enough, you'll hear it. That faint heartbeat under the floorboards, the wound they told you would fade, it's still there, still open, still bleeding. It's just learned how to bleed in silence. That's what happens when you've suffered too much. You become quiet with your pain. You start noticing things others don't, like how someone's tone changes when they're tired of you, how people avoid eye contact when they're lying, how most "how are yous" don't really want an answer. You read people like books. You see their cracks. You hear their pauses. Because when you've been broken enough times, you know the language of breaking fluently. And it's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just someone saying, "I'm tired," when what they really mean is, "I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this." You get that. You live in that sentence. People think resilience looks like standing tall. No. Real resilience is crawling through the dark with your soul shredded and still managing to look someone in the eye and say, "I'm fine." It's showing up again and again with nothing left in the tank. It's going home after a long day and breaking down in the shower, then stepping out like nothing happened. It's not glamorous. It's not some dramatic inspirational montage. It's messy, ugly, lonely, and the worst part, no one claps for you. No one even notices. Because you're so good at hiding it, they don't realize you're performing a miracle just by waking up. And so you become the strong one, the reliable one, the one everyone turns to when they fall apart, but who catches you, who holds you when your insides collapse. They don't ask, do they? Because they think you're fine. You always bounce back. You always smile. But what they don't see is the price. The cost of being the strong one. It's not just exhaustion. it's isolation. You start to feel invisible, like a vending machine for comfort. Insert problem, receive wisdom. But no one asks what's happening behind your eyes. No one wonders what demons you wrestle at 2 a.m. when the world's quiet and the mask slips just enough for the truth to breathe. And when you finally do break, when the dam cracks and the flood comes, oh, they're shocked. But you seemed fine. That's the funniest part. You seemed fine. As if seeming is the same as being. As if the smile you practiced in the mirror wasn't a survival tool. As if the jokes weren't just camouflage for the war in your chest. You've suffered too much when you start to envy people who can cry in public, when you start to resent people who haven't learned to wear masks yet. Because innocence becomes irritating, hope becomes laughable, and love becomes a fairy tale with a dark twist. But somewhere in all that darkness, you find a rhythm, a way to survive without really living. You build routines, habits, rituals that keep the chaos at bay. You learn how to fake calm, how to nod at the right moments, how to avoid the questions that matter. You become a chameleon, not to deceive others, but to protect yourself. Because you've learned the hard way, being real is dangerous. Vulnerability is currency in a rigged game. And every time you've opened your heart, someone's walked in with muddy boots and left without wiping their feet. So you shut the door, slowly, quietly, not with a slam, but with resignation. A soft, tired kind of closing. The kind that doesn't want revenge, just peace, just quiet, just space to breathe without having to explain the heaviness you carry. You laugh, but it doesn't reach your eyes. You smile, but it's painted on like war paint. And the only time you feel anything real anymore is in music, art, or moments that sneak up on you. A sunset, a song lyric, a stranger's kindness. Those tiny reminders that somewhere beneath all the damage, there's still something soft, something sacred, something worth saving. They think silence means peace, quiet equals calm, but not for the ones who've lived through a storm and never really made it out. For them, silence is loud, deafening. It's a hallway with no doors. A waiting room where nothing ever arrives. It's the echo of everything they couldn't say, didn't say, weren't allowed to say. People assume if you're not talking about your pain, it must not be there. But oh, it's there. Lurking, watching, breathing down their neck while they try to smile through dinner, nod in meetings, hold someone else's hand and pretend they're still in their own body. They laugh too quickly sometimes, don't they? Smile too much, eyes too wide, voice just a little too cheerful, because they've rehearsed it. Rehearsed how to look okay. It's a performance, a very convincing one. The kind that wins awards in a world that claps for masks and punishes truth. But look closely. Watch how their hands fidget when no one's watching. How they never really relax their shoulders. How they scan the room for exits, not out of fear, but habit. A survival instinct born from too many times they had to run, emotionally, mentally, physically, and their eyes. That's where it lives. The haunted look, like they've seen something they can't unsee, felt something they can't explain, and they know if they started talking, really talking, They wouldn't stop, so they don't. They smile. They nod. They let everyone believe the story that feels safe. You're so strong, as if strength means not hurting. As if hurting means not hurting. As if hurting means not hurting. As if hurting means not hurting. It's exhausting, this charade, but they keep dancing because they've convinced themselves the truth would be too heavy for anyone else to carry. You ever meet someone who's too kind? Not just nice, kind. Almost too kind, like they're trying to make up for something. That's them. The ones who've suffered. They know what it's like to be on the edge, staring down into nothing. They know the value of a gentle word, a warm gesture, a shoulder that doesn't flinch when you cry. So they become that for others, but rarely for themselves, because no one ever taught them how to receive kindness, only how to give it, and it shows. In the way they'll drop everything to help you but never ask for help themselves. They don't trust easily, but when they do, oh, they love hard, too hard. It's not romantic, it's desperate. Like they're clinging to a lifeboat in the middle of the ocean, hoping you'll be the one who doesn't let go. But people do, they always do. So eventually the ones who've suffered too much stop expecting anything. They expect to be left, expect to be misunderstood, expect to be too much or not enough. They build low expectations into every interaction like bricks in a wall, and they decorate the top with barbed wire made of humor, sarcasm, distraction. You know who they are. You've seen them. Maybe you are them. The ones who make everyone else laugh, but don't remember the last time they laughed for real. The ones who light up a room and then go home to the dark. They're not sad all the time. That's the trick. Some days they feel okay. Some days they even feel happy. But there's always a ceiling on it, like a glass barrier between them and joy. They press their hands against it, try to break through, but it never just reflects their own face back at them, reminding them that there's a version of life they're not sure they'll ever fully reach. And they dream, oh, they dream big. Not because they believe in fairy tales, but because hope is the only rebellion they've got left. Hope is dangerous, reckless, foolish, and they love it. Not because it always works, but because it's better than giving up. So they hold on to songs, to memories, to whispered promises they made to themselves in the middle of the night when the world was asleep and the pain was too loud. They hold on even when their fingers bleed, because letting go feels worse. Letting go would mean admitting that the suffering won, and they can't have that. Not yet, not ever. So they keep moving, one quiet, stubborn breath at a time.